former Attorney General Bill Barr kind of had a maybe you'd call it a come to Jesus moment on this current election between President Trump and President Biden. I want you to take a listen to what he thinks, and this is just what he thinks would happen if Joe Biden was reelected.
I think it's my duty to pick the person I think would do the least harm to the country, and in my mind, that's I will vote the Republican ticket. I will support the Republican ticket. I think the real danger to the country, the real danger to democracy, as I say, is the progressive agenda.
He went on to say even further that, and I want to play this for everybody, what a continuation of the Biden administration would be for America.
Well, Trump, and I said Trump may be playing Russian roulette, but continuation of the Biden administration is national suicide, in my opinion.
Rick, if Bill Barr believes that a continuation of the Biden administration is committing national suicide, I mean, I would imagine a lot of American voters feel the same way, regardless of how they may have felt about President Trump even 4 years ago.
Joe Biden is so bad, we're about to see Bill Barr campaign for Donald Trump. I mean, we're getting into that territory. People see what President Trump did versus what Joe Biden did as president. We're not talking about promises from politicians of what they might do in the future. The American people actually get to compare apples to apples. They compare presidencies to presidencies. And this is key. Donald Trump had a closed border and no wars. And that alone should win you the presidency when you look at the debacle that Joe Biden has gotten us into, and we're still not out of. Remember, we've got Americans being held hostage in Israel. We've got a fight over a raging war in Europe.
I want you to listen to this, because this is what Bill Barr called just this trial by Alvin Bragg in New York.
Well, I've said from the beginning, this case is an abomination. You know, it's obviously political. 7 years after he pays hush money to try to come up with this case. It's also, as you say, it's not only far-fetched, they're trying to predicate it on a federal crime, which wasn't prosecuted, and they're wrong about it. This was not a campaign contribution. They're just wrong on the law. But to me, this shows that the real threat to liberty, the real threat to our system, are the excesses of the progressive left. They're perverting the system of justice, and that's where the danger lies: the corruption and subversion of our institutions by the left.
This case they want done by November. Now, early November is the election. So if they want it done by the election, I mean, they're talking the first week, maybe 8-9 days into November. Do you see them possibly trying to fast track it to get it there just to hurt Donald Trump?
If you look at the Manhattan prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, I think that is his purpose. I think any objective legal analyst recognizes that this particular trial does not make legal sense. It does make political sense. And there is a huge distinction. So what Alvin Bragg has done is he has bootstrapped misdemeanor cases and then created a felony case with respect to a federal crime with respect to campaign finance violations or alleged violations. But basically what we have is a misdemeanor trial, and this trial should be either dismissed or it should be over in a short period of time.
This is, to me, the first example of massive election interference, because it shows how much time President Trump has to spend in a Manhattan courtroom instead of being on the campaign trail like President Biden.
At the end of the day, however, Donald Trump will perhaps suffer harm politically if he's convicted, even in New York, even if most Americans agree that the jury panel is biased. But I think at the end of the day, the American people will be realistic about the choices they face between Biden and Trump.
It takes them off the campaign trail.
Absolutely.
I mean, what more election interference is there than preventing the other major candidate, if you're Joe Biden, that you have to beat by keeping them off the campaign trail and keeping them out of fundraisers?
Right, absolutely. Trying to soil his name and his reputation and then keep him so occupied that he cannot go and actually campaign and participate in this election.
They had a tough time with jurors on day one of this. They started out with nearly 100 people. 50 were out immediately. They just raised their hand and said, I cannot be impartial. And that could be because you don't like him, you do like him. But that's it. They didn't even need to ask more questions.
It's extremely difficult for the American people to be completely impartial with respect to Donald Trump. You either have an opinion for or against him, and probably the most solid basis of selecting jury members is to simply go out there and find individuals that have been in a coma for the last 7 or 8 years.
What they're trying to do is they're not trying to ask who you're going to vote for, CC. They're trying to get around that.
Yeah.
But they're trying to say is, can you be impartial to President Trump?
Yeah.
Like, do you love him too much or do you hate him too much?
Right.
And it is a pretty political question because now that he has been a president of the United States. So I think you could have asked that question before when he was just kind of like a celebrity and a businessman. But now that you ask it, it is basically asking, you don't have to tell them which way you are, but it kind of is asking, do you feel strongly about him politically?
Right.
Even though they tried to say, well, you could still want to vote for him and still be impartial. I'm really not sure how you could.
Right. I think it's all the political questions because it's a political prosecution. That's where the truth is. They ask the political questions because this whole prosecution is about politics. It's not about really a criminal prosecution at all. It's a political prosecution.
We knew this was going to be an issue for President Trump, not just because it was in New York, but also because you had the judicial system, the politics of New York, and the fact that 88% of New Yorkers are registered Democrats. So they already have this kind of anti-Trump view that, hey, I'm not voting for this guy. I think he's the wrong guy to be president. And they tried to say that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't impact whether you could be impartial or not. But I think most people who hear that, when they decided, could I be impartial or not, they would raise their hand if they think that there's someone who is definitely going to campaign against him or definitely going to campaign for him, and being honest, that they couldn't really be impartial. It'd be pretty hard to separate that out, considering these trials have become so politically charged. I mean, even when you hear Bill Barr say, this is like bootstrapping laws to try and make felonies out of low-level misdemeanors.